Hey guys, welcome to Church Online. My name's Taylor. I'm the lead pastor here at New Song. If I haven't met you, so glad that you're spending some time with us today. Let me tell you what we're going to do together. We're going to be beginning a very special portion of the Gospel of Matthew, actually. In fact, probably my favorite section in the Gospel of Matthew. And it's been called the Sermon on the Mount, Matthew 5, 6, and 7. And some of you might be thinking right now, hey, didn't we just do this a couple years ago? To which I would say to you, you're absolutely right. And why we're doing it again is because you don't remember anything that I said, okay? So it's going to be great. I'm really looking forward to it. And here's the reality of what is going on in the Sermon on the Mount. This is Jesus' first major block of teaching in the Gospel of Matthew, and he's literally going to be preaching about what your life is going to look like as a citizen of the kingdom of heaven, right? Because he's been talking a lot about the kingdom of God, the kingdom of heaven. We've heard a lot of from Jesus about that, and now what Jesus is going to do is he's going to transition to say, okay, now if you become a citizen of that kingdom, this is what your life is going to continue to look like, ever increasingly so. Now, here's the big idea. Right? Culture and secularism and the 21st century Western world has a set of values, and it's preaching at you a way of life. And it's saying, this is what it looks like to be truly human, right? It's all about you and your personal happiness and pleasure. It's maximizing pleasure, minimizing pain. And that's what life is all about. This is what sex is all about. It's just a biological release between a couple people. There's no real greater meaning than that. This is how you do relationships. This is how you spend your money, right? This is the message of secularism that says this is what it's like to be truly human. Now, what Jesus is going to do is he's going to step into all of those areas that you and I have bought into what culture says it looks like to be truly human. He's going to say, hey, you know what? Actually, the kingdom of heaven operates completely different than that. And your life is going to begin to be characterized by different things as a citizen of the kingdom of heaven. He's literally, what is going to happen? Jesus is going, and this is what I love about the Sermon on the Mount, is a lot of people look at the Bible and they think that, man, it's just kind of outdated and ancient. It's not relevant to my life. And what Jesus is going to do is he is going to step into every area of your life. He's going to press into every area of your life, and he's going to say, hey, this is what it looks like to be truly human, to flourish in every area. This is what money is about. This is how you spend money. This is what it looks like to be married. This is how you do relationships. This is how you give. This is how you pray. He's going to answer some really big questions. He's going to get into all of that. He's going to even get into the very motivations of your heart, man. He's going to talk about why you do what you do, and he wants to transform you in the midst of it all. And so that's what's going to happen. We're going to find out this today, that the Sermon on the Mount, it's so backward. It's so upside down and inside out from anything that you and I are used to. But it's because Jesus is laying out a vision for humanity, saying this is what it looks like to be truly human. This is the kind of person that I want to make you into. And what he's going to prove to you and to me as we make our way through the Sermon on the Mount is that following Jesus is so much more than just believing the right stuff about God. Right? Because the reality is what's happened is Christianity is kind of filtered through the 21st century Western world, and it's become diluted. It's become something that it wasn't originally. We've kind of dumbed it down to, hey, you know what? You want to be a Christian? Pray a prayer, believe the right stuff about God. God will snap your fingers, make your life better, and you're all good. But what Jesus is doing is he's stepping into that narrative in the Sermon on the Mount, and he's like, hey, that is lame, man. That's stupid. I don't want you to just believe the right stuff about me. I want to actually get in and transform your life. Following Jesus is about transformation. And that's what Jesus is going to prove here, that it's not just about believing the right things about Jesus and you're in. Jesus is saying, if you're really a Christian, your life is going to change. And here's what I believe, man. Here's my conviction as we start into the Sermon on the Mount together today, that there is revolutionary power in the words of Jesus here. And I really believe, hear me out, that if you will submit yourself and open yourself up to the words of Jesus in these chapters, that you will come out on the other end of this completely different, totally changed, radically, different than you are right now. There's revolutionary power in this to change your life, to restore your marriage, to restore your relationship that's broken with your kids, with people that you know, that you love. The power of the Sermon on the Mount, Jesus' words here, will get into every area of your life and bring freedom and healing and transformation. And that's my hope for you personally. That's my hope for myself. That's my hope for our church at New Song. and ultimately our city and our county. So let's go ahead and jump in. We're going to read Matthew chapter 5, the first 2 verses here. And it says this: seeing the crowds, he, meaning Jesus, went up on the mountain. And when he sat down, his disciples came to him, and he opened his mouth and he taught them, saying, okay, stop right there. So Jesus, what's been happening, right? He's traveling around, he's preaching, he's healing people. He's got this massive following. A lot of people are crowding around him. He's got the crowds, he's got his disciples, and people want to hear what he's got to say. They want to be healed from him because they hear that he's doing that. And so what Jesus does is right here, right off the bat, he goes up a mountain and he gets everybody with him. His disciples are there, the crowds are there, and he sits down, he opens his mouth and he begins to teach them. Okay, now there is so much going on there. I could preach at least 2.5 messages on those 2 verses right there. But I'm not going to do it because for the sake of your attention span. But there's a lot going on here. And part of what Matthew's doing is he's connecting Jesus to the Moses story, right? What Matthew's doing is he's saying, guys, Jesus, he's the new and the better Moses. The Jewish people, they were waiting for God to raise up a prophet like Moses, which we'll talk about him in a second. They were waiting for God to raise up somebody like Moses to come and lead them and teach them and teach them the true meaning of the law of God, the Torah, the commandments. And so what Matthew's doing right here is he's like, hey guys, Jesus, this guy right here, he really is the Messiah. He really is the new and the better Moses. Because here's the thing, what did Moses do? Right? Moses is the guy in the Old Testament who went up the mountain. The people of Israel were down at the base of the mountain. They couldn't touch the mountain. Moses goes up to sit with God to get the commandments, right? The 10 commandments. And really there's 613. There's not just 10. But he goes up the mountain. He gets the commandments of God. He comes back down and he speaks to the people and he says, okay, this is what you have to do to be the covenant people of God, to be the faithful covenant people of God. These are the laws you need to keep. These are the commandments that you need to keep. And in fact, now here's Jesus, the new and the better Moses, and he's on top of the mountain and he's teaching people too. Except in Moses' day, if you touch the mountain, you die. Right? If you touch the mountain when Moses goes up to sit with God, you die. Now here's Jesus, the new and the better Moses, and he's taking people up the mountain with him, and he's sitting and he's teaching them directly, which this is a part of the good news of the new covenant of grace that Jesus established, that now you have direct access to God himself, that he wants to teach you. And so Jesus is bringing people up to the mountain. He's teaching them. He's actually going to reference back to the commandments that Moses received from God. And we're going to hear him say this several times throughout the Sermon on the Mount. You've heard that it was said, right? You've heard that it was said, don't murder, don't kill somebody. You've heard that it was said, don't commit adultery, don't steal. And Jesus he's going to speak into those and he's going to say, but I say to you, listen, you've heard don't murder. I say to you, if you are even angry with your brother, you've already committed murder in your heart. That's what Jesus is going to say. And by the way, you could probably go to hell for it. That's what Jesus is going to say. And that's what he does here. He references back. In other words, what Jesus is saying is, hey, that law stuff, right? That law stuff, that was easy, guys. That was really easy, and you still haven't been able to figure it out after all of this time. What Jesus is doing is he is ratcheting up the standard of righteous living to such a crazy degree where he's not just saying, don't murder somebody. That's easy. Anybody can do that. But if you're actually even angry with somebody, you've already committed murder in your heart. He's ratcheting up the standard for righteous living so high. In fact, at one point, what Jesus is going to say, unless your righteousness exceeds the scribes and the Pharisees, you will not enter the kingdom of heaven. Right? That's a crazy statement. And this is what I mean. Like some of Jesus' craziest stuff is in the Sermon on the Mount. That's a crazy statement. I mean, who were the scribes and the Pharisees? Guys, these were the guys that were the most religiously devoted people of Jesus' day. I mean, take like a professional athlete, okay? Like take a Michael Phelps, all right? And like the devotion that guy had to his sport when he was at the top of his career, he was flinging all those gold medals everywhere, right? He was doing great. And take Michael Phelps and that devotion, minus the pot, okay? Take that out of the picture. But you have to be a better Christian than Michael Phelps was a swimmer if you want any hope at getting into the kingdom. That's what Jesus is saying right there. That's crazy, man. Now, here's the thing. Why is Jesus saying that though? right? Why does he say that? And here's what I need you to understand. What I'm about to say right now is literally the most important thing that I am going to say as we go throughout the entire Sermon on the Mount. So I need you to pay attention. Please just listen to me. Don't worry about your kid screaming their head off in the kitchen right now. I know it's crazy at home. Just pay attention. Don't look away. Stop scrolling on Instagram, whatever you're doing. Just listen, because this is the most important thing that I'm going to say to you. Why is Jesus ratcheting up the standard of righteous living so high? It's not because he wants you to try harder to be a better person. This is what you got to understand. That's not why he's doing that. It's not to get you to try harder at being a better person. And in fact, if you do not understand these first three verses in Matthew chapter 5, you don't understand Jesus. Number one, which means that you don't actually understand, man, what it means to be a Christian, a Jesus follower. And ultimately, you will fall into a fake religion that's not Christianity, that's going to burn you out and cause you to walk away. That's really what's at stake here. Jesus, what's happening? And here's the point. Jesus is raising the standard of righteousness, of right living so high because he's trying to crush you. Welcome to church. I'm glad you're here, right? This is what Jesus is doing. He's raising the standard of righteous living so high because he wants to crush you into a ground of fine sand. So all you have in your life is a desperate cry that says, God, here I am completely at your mercy. I have no goodness to stand on. I need you to come and move if anything good is going to happen in my life. If I'm going to get into the kingdom, if I'm going to become this kind of kingdom person that you want me to, I literally can't do it. That's what Jesus is trying to do here. The only way that I get into heaven, this is what Jesus is trying to help you realize, is it's not by my own righteousness. Jesus, it's if you give me yours. That's the whole point. And if you don't get that, listen, if you don't get that, what's going to happen is you are going to think that being a Christian is all about doing the right things and being a good enough person, you trying hard enough and you doing more. And if you do all of that good enough, what's going to happen is you can obtain this kind of false sense of security that because you do those good things good enough that, you fit into the church crowd and all's good and the kingdom's yours and God's fine with you. And what's going to happen, man, is that's going to motivate you for a little while. But then what? You're not going to be able to keep up. Because what's going to happen is you read the Bible, you hear these stories of these amazing people and Peter and John and Paul and David slaying the giant and all of this stuff. You see this kind of person that you're supposed to be becoming, right? And you're a Christian, you're supposed to be a leader, you're supposed to do all of this stuff, but you can't measure up. Because the pressure is too great. Why? Because you think, man, that you're the one that has to make yourself into that kind of person. And what Jesus is doing is he just blew that all up out of the water. He's blowing all of that all out of the water here in the first three verses of Matthew chapter 5. And so what happens is you figure Christianity doesn't work. And so you move on. And I've seen this happen so many times with so many people that I went to school with, that I know, that I love very much. Is that was your version of Christianity? Maybe you're watching this now. I'm so glad you're here. Most of the time what happens is you become agnostic, meaning you believe in God. You kind of ditch Jesus, but you believe that God is real. Maybe you're just not sure. You don't know who he is or how to get there. This is ironic, is you hold on to your Christian values, which is kind of interesting to me. Like you'll take some of the stuff that Jesus said and you'll keep it as like a core value of your life. Like it's all about, love your neighbor as yourself, respect other people, be a decent human being. You'll take all of that, but you just kind of ditch Jesus. What's going on? Why did that happen? That's because, man, you're under the Moses religious system. And you don't understand that Jesus is the new and he's the better Moses. And this is the difference, man, between Christianity and every other religion, right? Every other religion is about, in worldview and philosophy, even secularism, man, I don't have time to get into that, but it's true with even secularism, is that this is what it's all about. This is what you have to do to get to God on top of the mountain. God's up there. You have to do these things. You can't do these things. And once you do all of that good enough, then you can get to God on top of the mountain. That's every other worldview and religion out there. This This is the difference this is Christianity. God comes down the mountain himself, Matthew chapter 1-4, and God himself takes you and I up the mountain with him, Matthew chapter 5. That's crazy. That's totally different than anything I ever heard growing up, but that's the reality of the gospel. This is what Jesus is on about in the world. And so why did you get to that place where you got burnt out and you walked away? It's because you didn't understand what it means that Jesus is the new and the better Moses. What Jesus is about to say is, I am the one who saves you, and I am the one who is about to make you into the kind of person I'm going to lay a vision out for in the next 3 chapters. All I need from you is to recognize that and to stay open and broken and desperate. And I'll get you there. That's what Jesus is about to say. That's why he starts the Sermon on the Mount in verse 3. These are the first words out of Jesus' mouth. Let's go ahead and read this together. It says this: blessed are the poor in spirit, for theirs is the kingdom of heaven. Now, this is what I mean by saying the Sermon on the Mount is crazy, right? Blessed, listen to that. Blessed are the poor in spirit, for theirs is the kingdom of heaven. That's crazy. Okay, so let's break this up. Let's start with that word blessed, okay? Because this is really big right here. That word, when you and I, here's what happens. When you hear the word blessed, what do you think? We think, hashtag blessed, right? Bruno Mars, 24 karat magic, right? We think money and cars and all of the toys and all of the stuff. And here's the deal. Jesus is going to have a very different vision of what it means to be truly blessed. And in fact, this is the amazing thing about Jesus starting right here with that one word. That word in the Greek, it actually means to be profoundly happy. It's not like you just woke up and you're kind of having a good day. It means to be profoundly happy. It's a state of being in which congratulations are in order, like you're having a baby or you're getting married or something like that. That's what it means to be blessed. And Jesus goes right into this and he's saying, blessed, meaning I want to talk to you right off of the bat about your profound happiness. That's ridiculous, man. Jesus could have started the Sermon on the Mount with anything else, but he goes right into talking about, let me tell you what it really means to be happy. Because I know that that's what you're in pursuit of in your life. You're in pursuit of true happiness, true peace of heart. Let me tell you how you're going to get there. This is what Jesus goes right into. He could have talked about anything else, but he goes straight here. And why this is amazing is because, listen, the greatest motivator in your life is pleasure. I don't know if you noticed that, but it's true. The greatest motivator of your life is pleasure. Some people will say, no, it's not. Pain's the greatest motivator of your life. But I don't necessarily agree with that. Why? Because why do you, when pain comes, why do you want to change? Why do you want to get out of it? It's to get yourself back into the place of pleasure, which is why we find ourselves in this moment where you're uncertain. You're not in a place of ease and at peace because your life is uncertain right now. A lot of things are up in the air. You don't know if you got a job to go back to, whatever. Your comfort and your normal way of living is being threatened. And so you're pining for that place of pleasure and ease in your life. And Jesus goes right at this and he says, let me tell you what it truly means to be blessed and to be profoundly happy. And it's just amazing to me because this is why you do everything in your life, right? This is why you spend your money the way you spend it. This is why you go on the vacations that you go on. This is why you married the person that you married, right? Because it wasn't because they made you feel bad about yourself, right? Like you didn't get with the person who you're married to now and was like, hey, you make me feel really bad about myself. Like you suck all joy out of my life. Let's get married, right? That wasn't why you married the person. It wasn't because you couldn't stand being around them, although that's probably becoming a reality for many of you. Right now, you're just like, get me out of this house, please, right? It wasn't because of any of that stuff. It was because they made you feel good. Right? It was because they made you happy. This is why you married the person that you ended up marrying. You're on a journey in life to find true happiness. And this gets us into the territory of what we could call Christian hedonism, which is the idea that, the incarnation of God through the person of Jesus, God becoming a human in Jesus, him dying a substitutionary death in your place on the cross, raising from the dead 3 days later for your restoration and for your salvation. Why God does it is for your joy. right? And this is important because a lot of you have this view of God that being a Christian is all about, self-deprecation. It's about being serious all the time. It's about not being full of joy and of happiness, but about being serious and never smiling and doing anything fun, right? And Jesus, right out of the gate, he's like, no, that's not what I'm all about. Let's talk about what it looks like to be truly happy. Let me tell you how to get there. And this is what it's all about. It's about the kingdom of heaven. That you're never actually gonna be truly satisfied with anything temporal, man. Anything physical that you could get your hands on in this life, it's actually not ultimately gonna satisfy you. And Jesus is like, I want to bring you into the true satisfaction of your soul. I want to bring you into the kingdom of heaven. And that's where you're gonna find true satisfaction and profound happiness and ultimate joy. Now, this is where this is going to get really offensive to 21st century ideals even more, because what does Jesus say? He says, happy are the who? Profoundly happy, blessed, and to be congratulated are the who? The poor, right? The blessed are the poor. That's what Jesus says. Now, here's the thing. This is where this gets even crazier, because Jesus had two words in the Greek he could have used to explain what it means to be poor. Number one is we get the example in Mark chapter 12 of the widow with the two copper coins that she offers in the temple, right? Where Jesus says that she was a poor widow and she gave all that she had to live on. But the reality is she still had enough to live, to provide for her basic needs. So he could have used that one word for poor. But there's also another word for poor in the Greek it's to be completely destitute. It's like you have empty hands and empty pockets. You're on the street corner flying a sign. You're begging. You have literally zero money to your name. No solid ground underneath you to stand on. Now, which word do you think that Jesus used right here? It was the second one. Blessed are you when you are bankrupt. Right? That doesn't make any sense. I know some of you are like, what is up with this? I'm out of here. Stick with me, okay? Because this will change your life. He's saying, blessed are the poor. Blessed are you when you're bankrupt, when you have no solid ground to stand on, when the ground falls out from underneath you, when you have nothing to claim as your own, when you're destitute and beggarly. It doesn't make any sense. Why? Because nobody wants to be poor. We all want to be rich, right? It's like, give me all the money. I want to be rich. Nobody wants to be poor. This is insane. This is backwards. This is upside down. It doesn't make any sense. In our society, listen, this is one area where we're really messed up, is because what we've done is we've correlated the blessing of God with money, haven't we? So we say, you know what? That guy's got lots of money. They're doing really financially well. I mean, God, they're blessed. God loves them a lot because look at how blessed they are. And then we take this guy over here, or maybe you don't have as much money and you're like, man, I know God loves me, but I'm not as blessed as that guy. And so this is what we've done. We've correlated the blessing of God with money. But keep in mind, man, that Jesus was homeless and broke for his entire ministry. Okay. So that's the guy that you're following. But the reality is some of you are feeling financial pressure right now that you haven't maybe in decades, years, or maybe you've never felt the kind of financial pressure that you're coming underneath right now. I talked to a family this week where the mom, she's been working with this company for 12 years, and she's guaranteed pay through the end of May, and then doesn't know if she's going to have a job to go back to after that. They could just totally let her go right there. I mean, that's a lot of time to invest in a company, to have it all up in the air and potentially slipping through your finger. And I know a lot of you are experiencing that same thing right now. To which, here's the amazing thing. This is what Jesus would say to you, okay? And this is what doesn't make any sense. But he would look you in the face and he would say, congratulations. That's what's going on right here. Congratulations. Truly happy and blessed are you. Why? Because if you're a Jesus follower, you have the only thing that really matters. That means it doesn't jobs and money and careers and all of that sort of stuff. It's great and there's a place for it, but it's not of ultimate significance. You have the kingdom of God, man. You are an inheritor of the kingdom of heaven. Jesus has given it to you. He's brought you in and he's given you the riches of the kingdom of heaven, which means that you don't just have a hope beyond this life like we were talking about a couple weeks ago. But the reality is that the kingdom of heaven, the riches of the kingdom, actually come into the here and now as God will faithfully provide for you moving forward through this moment. That's why you don't have to be afraid. Now, Jesus isn't talking specifically about financial poverty right here, right? You could be, but he's using the illustration of it. You could be dead, broke, and bankrupt and be rich in spirit. Be the opposite of what it means to be poor in spirit. Just like you could have all the money in the world and you could still be poor in spirit. It doesn't necessarily have anything to do with money, but Jesus is using financial bankruptcy to illustrate this and say, this is what I want you to be like spiritually. Spiritually bankrupt. Blessed are you when you are in that place of spiritual poverty. And now here's the thing, man. This is where the Bible, again, is going to go head to head with something that we've all been influenced by, which is New Age philosophy, which says this. It says that you're a good person, that you have power within you to accomplish your own salvation, that if you just speak out the right things, that the universe owes them to you and they all will come to you, right? And what Jesus is doing is he's coming right at that. And this is what the Bible teaches. The Bible teaches what you and I know to be true, because when you look on the inside of you, you see the same exact thing that I do, man. What do you see? You see that you're not a good person. You see that you're angry. You see that you're messed up. You see that you're broken. You know those thoughts that you have on the inside of your head. You're quick to judge other people. The primary motivation of your life is for yourself and your own good and your own joy and happiness and all of that stuff. You don't really ultimately care about others. You'll serve other people, sure, but as long as it benefits you in some way or another, right? You see the same exact thing that I do, man. And this is all the Bible does, is it teaches you what's already known by you and I, that we're depraved, that we're sinful, that we're full of pride, and that we're completely, because of that, cut off from God. That's all the Bible's doing, and that's what Jesus is doing right here. The Bible comes at you and it says what you already know to be true. And Jesus is saying, blessed are you when you're spiritually bankrupt, when you confess that. Right? When you can confess and say, I have no goodness on the inside of me. I have no leg to stand on. God, you don't owe me anything. Jesus is saying, truly happy and congratulations are in order to you when you get to that place. Why? Because yours is the kingdom of heaven. I'm not good. Man, I will admit that. I know that to be true to myself. I'm powerless to accomplish my own salvation. That's what Jesus is talking about. You know what's really interesting to me? This is what's really interesting. Do you know what the most successful recovery-based organization is? It's AA, Alcoholics Anonymous, right? At most successful recovery-based group, organization, in human history. I mean, it's just crazy. And this is the interesting thing. Step one, their number one principle, right? They've got 12 steps to recovery. If you want to beat alcohol, you got to go through this. You got to do the 12 steps. Step number one. Do you know what step number one is? It's you got to recognize that you're actually powerless against your addiction. That it literally, it's this. I am powerless against alcohol. That's step number one. Now, that's exactly what Jesus is saying here. You gotta recognize what you already know to be true and be real about that. Now, here's the thing. Jesus wasn't taking notes from AA, right? They totally got that from him. It wasn't like he showed up at an AA meeting. It was like, hey, my name's Jesus and I'm an alcoholic. Hi, Jesus, right? That didn't happen. They're totally taking this from Jesus. This is what he's saying. You got to be like that spiritually. And this is what the gospel does, man, is it brings you face to face with your own depravity before it sets you free from it. The gospel, it comes and it undercuts you. It offends you before it frees you, and it condemns you before it releases you. This is what the gospel does. This is what Jesus is doing right here. And what's going on is Jesus is like, you have no ground to stand on before God. If you listen, God doesn't owe you anything. If you have breath in your lungs right now, that's more than you deserve. God doesn't owe you anything. And Jesus is saying you need to realize that that's the position that you're in. You want in on the kingdom, you need to recognize that you have no right to be there. You've got nothing to offer. You're completely powerless to accomplish your own salvation. There's nothing that you can do about it. And once you recognize your need for what only Jesus can do in your life, boom, the kingdom's yours. That's the whole verse right there. Now, that's really offensive, right? That's really offensive. If you haven't been mad at me, you're probably there right now, right? That's because, but here's the deal. What I just told you, it's actually the most freeing thing that anybody has ever told you. Why? Because that means you can't work for anything. You can't actually do anything to work your way there. You can't do anything to deserve it. It only becomes yours because of what Jesus has done in your place through his death and through his resurrection, through what he's done. And this is the double-edged sword of the message of Jesus, man. This is what's going on here. Tim Keller says it like this. He says, the gospel is that you are more depraved and sinful than you ever dared imagine. More messed up and broken, depraved and sinful, unworthy, undeserving than you would ever even dare to imagine. But at the same time, you are more accepted and loved in Jesus than you ever dare dream. And that's the reality of the start of the Sermon on the Mount. Let me illustrate with this, and I'm going to bring it into a close. You know, Marissa and I, we have two kids, my wife and I, two kids, 2-year-old and a 4 or 5 month old. I don't know, she's somewhere in there. And, we love them. And, you know, having kids is a crazy experience, right? Like Marissa went into labor and we get our stuff to the birth center where we had both of our kids, and it's a crazy experience. You're just kind of like, wow, I can't believe this is happening. And then all of a sudden you have the kid and you're holding the kid and it's like, oh my goodness, everything about my life totally just changed. And then it's time to pack up all your stuff and go, and you're holding your baby, right? And I remember this with both of my children. We're leaving the place where we had them, and I'm walking out the door and I look at the people, like the nurses and the staff and stuff, and I'm like, so you're just going to let me walk out the door with this kid, right? Like, are you kidding me? You don't even need a license to become a parent, man. It's crazy. It's terrifying. And so you take the kids home. And here's the thing. Both of our children, it's amazing what they teach you about life and about God. And here's one thing that I was thinking about as I was preparing this week. They both came into the world 100% dependent. Right? If they were left to themselves, they wouldn't have lasted 24 hours. They can't do anything for themselves. They can't change their diaper. They can't feed themselves. They can't change their clothes. They can't do anything, right? They are completely 100% dependent on the goodness of mom and dad to take care of them. That's the whole point. And in fact, this last week, a few days ago, this was next level stuff. Okay, guys. So, we were sitting in the living room and Marissa's holding Lena. This might be TMI, but it's in my head right now. So I'm going to have to say it because that's just how I work. So she's kind of patting Lena, right? She's burping her. And then all of a sudden, Lena starts spitting up. And so Marissa, as a reflex, what does she do? And this is the difference between kid number 1 and kid number 2. Okay. She scoops her hand underneath and she catches it. And meanwhile, I'm over on the chair, like, I'm just like gagging in my mouth, right? But for some reason, I'm like more attracted to her than I've ever been right before in my life. Like, wow, that was really amazing, babe. That was super cool. I'm gagging. And I look at her, I'm like, did you really just do that? And she's like, it is what it is, babe. It is what it is. And so she wipes it. And you know, here's the reality. They're 100% dependent. And what Jesus is saying here is that right there, that's the picture. That's what it looks like to get born again into the kingdom of heaven. You get in by recognizing spiritually that you have that same kind of need. And Jesus says, I'm the only one that can do anything about it. And as you continue to trust yourself to me, says Jesus, I will faithfully make you into this kind of person that I'm going to lay out a vision for over the next 3 chapters. Yes, you're going to mess up, right? You're not going to be perfect. You are going to screw up. You're not going to do the Sermon on the Mount perfectly. In fact, you're going to fall on your face plenty of times, and you're going to make a mess of stuff, and you're going to spit up. And Jesus is like, I'm going to catch it. I'm just kidding. He's not going to do that. But you know what I mean, right? You know what I mean? Like, we're not going to be perfect, but Jesus is saying, this is what I need from you. Your brokenness, your dependence, you staying in that place of spiritual poverty. See, this is what the gospel does, man. Religion, what it does is it puts burdens on. It puts pressure on you, and the gospel takes it all off because Jesus took all of that on your behalf on the cross. And that is what the beginning of the Sermon on the Mount is all about. Let's pray. Jesus, I thank you so much that you started, when you started teaching us here in the Gospel of Matthew, you started with this verse. And Lord, this is just going to be something that we continue to come back to, so relevant for our lives today. God, we just thank you so much for how good you are. And Lord, I pray for people who are watching this, who have been fighting against you. Lord, maybe they're that kind of that Jesus follower fell away for a little bit, and they just got their mail read that they left because they were under the Moses type religious system. And Jesus, you are pulling them into the truth of what the gospel of grace and of Jesus is all about. I pray, Lord, that you would give them grace to fully surrender everything about their lives to you today. And Father, I thank you for just this incredible certainty that we can have, that the kingdom of heaven is at hand, it's ours, you are faithful, and you will continue to provide and meet us in this moment of our great need. As we stay dependent on you, as we stay in a place of trust that, Lord, you are going to continue to be faithful. In Jesus' name, amen.